of experts will delve into securing our future, food security in a changing climate. Please welcome the moderator of the session who will be briefing the topic as well as inviting his expert guests. Moderator Saifullah Rabi', who is the UAE Managing Partner at Logic Consulting. Please come on stage. You will have, I think, a Q&A, a little bit of time, maybe 5 minutes. You want to allocate it for the Q&A from the audience. Please put your hand up if you have a question at the end of the session.
Hi, everyone. I think we have an exciting session ahead of us where we have a lot of stakeholders belonging to different parts of the value chain. So let us start off by welcoming Abdullah Al-Hashmi. He is the Chief Operating Officer of DP World Parks and Zones. Abdul Jabbar. He is the CEO of IFCO Group in Somaliland, Central Asia, and Afghanistan, responsible for oils and fats. We have Kenneth DeCosta. He is the Managing Director of Barakat. Suresh Vaidyanathan, CEO of Abu Dhabi Food Hub. And Hassan Halawi, General Manager of Elite Agro Projects. So as you can see, we have very diverse group here, people coming from omni-channel aggregators. We have logistics side, everybody here. So I will start off, I guess, with first quick intro question here for my panelists, which is how they perceive or how they see the problem of food security from their own perspective and from where they belong in the ecosystem. So I'll start with Abdullah. So what do you think is the problem that, or if you can summarize the problem in few statements, what would you see the problem that we are to solve in the future and ahead of us?
First and foremost, I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and thank you, Saif, for the introduction and for the question. I think it's a very difficult question to address in 40 minutes. We will be debating this for a very long period of time before we come to a conclusion. The challenge lies into multiple dimensions. So you have alignment on a regulatory front that needs to happen. So we need to work from a regulatory perspective much more closer with the farmers and logistic companies. The second challenge is the availability or the needed infrastructure in pockets where cargo is naturally available is not there. So we see in many of the countries across the globe, they are blessed with a lot of harvest, they are blessed with a lot of products, but unfortunately, because of lack of infrastructure, lack of logistic network, we're unable to take that cargo to the demand zones, and it gets spoiled. The other front is how can we integrate production with and processing of food with supply chain to increase the shelf life of these products. So traditionally, the cargo or the farmer will produce the cargo, will produce the agricultural product, and then it will be trucked traditionally to a point of processing. And in that process, you will have a lot of the cargo gets spoiled. So it's really about reducing spoilage. It's about working with the regulatory and governments in order to create the right incentive for people to collaborate with each other. And second is improving supply chain network to increase the shelf life of the product.
Thank you for that. I think we got a perspective here, three issues: regulation, infrastructure, being connected more to the processing. Hassan, from your perspective, you are involved in design and you are involved in construction and EPC contracting. What do you think is the key problems that needs to be solved from a farming standpoint?
Agriculture is traditionally one of the hardest industries out there. And we face the challenges that come across all the different sectors. They all get combined with us. So in our part, we look after the development arm, the development of the industry, both here in the UAE and regionally. The key challenges that we're facing now is to adapt the industry and the agriculture to the changing climatic conditions. We need to find out solutions that can meet and mitigate the global climate change that is affecting the production. In the last 10 years, we've noticed production dropping down by 10% due to the increase in temperature. If we continue the way we are, I think we're destined in 2050 to get an increase of another 3 degrees Celsius globally, and this will also affect the global food production by another 20%. So we need to come up with solutions that can mitigate this risk. And because of that, we have to invest, and we faced after the COVID or the pandemic, and all the chain events that happened after that, the supply chain constraint, we are now facing a very high capex whenever we look into agriculture projects. We're faced with a very high cost of investment. And at the same time, in the last few years, we also noticed that the interest rates were very high, so the access to finance was not available to encourage investors to go into the industry, especially that it's a very long-term and a really very slow return on investment compared to other options when investors look at it as a global diversification of their portfolio. So these are the main challenges that we face to adapt to the changing world, to mitigate the costs. Eventually, when you look at it in areas like here, in arid areas like in the GCC, UAE in particular, we also need to produce and still compete with other nations very close by who are producing at a much cheaper investment cost. And we have an open market whereby we have to justify investing all this, putting our investment and making a return on it while not far away from us, 3-4 hours shipping or maybe 1 day transit, we're getting produce at half our price. Yes. So these are the main challenges that we're facing in the industry in terms of local production, if you want to say.
That's very interesting. So Abdul Jabbar, you have global perspective on the matter. I believe you're working with more than 95 operations, 50 countries. So what is your perspective on this challenge from where you stand, and since you are exposed to the downstream and the upstream of the industry?
IFCO is a very diverse portfolio company, and we are moving from providing food products to food solutions. So we are largely partnering with technology providers, the innovators, the farming experts, the supply chain partners, and that enables us to build up our long-term strategy to overcome these challenges. And I'll explain to you how, because we have almost 95 operations in 50 countries, and our product portfolio has a reach to about 100 plus countries. That makes us very unique. And at the same time, these are challenges that, because the customers know us, the consumers know us, and we are into 3 key channels of the industry. So we are not only supplying packed product to the consumer, we are also covering, the out-of-home channel, which in some countries like in GCC is a very big channel. And then we are into the industrial, where we are supplying, ingredients to our partners who are actually then making food products to supply to their customers and consumers. So there is a lot of responsibility on us, and we work very closely with our partners now. Partnerships are very important. Luckily, we are in a country like UAE where both the private and the public sectors are working together with the government, and that is very unique. And I'll give you a few examples. We are lucky in this sense that we are heard, we are listened properly. We go to the regulatory people, we talk to them, we bring solutions, and then we implement them. So, for us, it is very important that we work with all of them together, and particularly, when it comes to the manufacturing sites, which are, all over the 50 countries. We are focusing on our global partners. So they may be they're with us from UAE, but they are actually across GCC and across the world. And particularly, I'll give the example of DP World, where our relationship with Jebel Ali Ports is going 40 years back. So it's a 4 decades association that we have together. And that allows us to enter into various parts, particularly the ports and the free zones. Where they are present, we go and we work with them. So we are part of the UAE's, hunger eradication plan, which is 2051, and that will enable us to reach our, to the countries which are landlocked through the ports and the free zones that across the region. So I'll give you the latest example that we have is in Berbera Port, the Somaliland, where we put up a 300,000 square feet plant. And it is, very close to the port. We bring in the raw materials, and then we pack it in Somaliland, and then we deliver it to all the landlocked countries in the neighborhood. That itself is a proof that we are, supporting the government's initiatives and overall the region's initiatives to overcome the food security issue.
And it resonates with the points of being close to the processing, so you're able to optimize the yield.
Yes, most of our operations are port-based.
Yes.
So you have to be very close to the port or very close to the market. And that's where, our operations are very effective, and we are reaching to all our consumers, customers, and I'll give you an example. For example, during the COVID, and it's not only, the natural disasters that are hitting, but also sometimes geopolitical, the vessel shortages, the container shortages, and all these play a big role in disrupting your supply chain. And we are very lucky that we are close to Jebel Ali, we are close to DP World. So we bring solutions. And that during the COVID, we faced a lot of challenges. And the way we overcame was very unique. So I tell a lot of people, that we would have gone to a university to learn crisis management.
Yes.
But those 2 years taught us the best crisis management, and we can never be defeated by any other situation or any other crisis. So what happened that, during that period, we actually grew because, a lot of people started depending on the local supplies, the regional supplies. So we are a multinational company, but we have got presence in most of the regions, and a lot of people approached us. So some customers who never approached us in 40 years,
yes,
they started coming and they started believing in us, and the trust was built. So this was a very unique opportunity which we grabbed with both hands and we delivered.
Yes.
So that has really helped the business, and it will continue because it taught us. Now we are taking it to the next phase where we are actually supporting the government and, to make sure that we are part of the food security plan of the country.
Thank you. That's very interesting, and that moves us to Suresh. And since we're talking about the topic of the supply chain and the logistics, so what's your perspective on the matter from a supply chain perspective, and what do you think is the most relevant technology that should be in place to improve food systems?
I think, first of all, good morning, everyone. Nice to be here. So when you look at the challenges, I think during the pandemic, I think the world saw this substantial disruption in the flow of food from origin to market. And it has also led to protectionism, right? So which is one of the challenges when it comes to food security, because countries started to have a strategic reserves multiple times of what they actually need. So this caused shortage of food across the world. I believe that this is one challenge we need to contend with when it comes to food security and supply chain. Secondly, also, I believe the climate change is also causing disruption when it comes to production capacities at the traditional origins, which means people have to adapt to getting food from other origins, right? So this is another challenge that one typically faces. So what it really requires here is a more collaborative approach, and here, the food security strategy of UAE is well articulated. One of the key themes of that is to diversify the origins, which is what we do at Abu Dhabi Food Hub. What we seek to do is to study the various origins, the supply chain, and then see how we can unlock potential from origins that previously did not have access to the UAE market, or the re-export market from here, which is a great opportunity for us. And the way we look at technology is to see, because today, if you take a customer's point of view, the customer requirements and tastes, they are very dynamic and they keep changing by the minute. So if you as a business, you're not prepared to meet this change or changing demand, you'll be out of business very quickly, which means that you need to have technology that can prioritize the sales channels in accordance with what the customer wants, right? And that then becomes a very complex management of the entire value chain, right, from production to the ultimate customer. Yes. So what technology can do is to create this collaboration to digitally include all the stakeholders within the value chain. So be it a private player or a government agency that is part of the process when it comes to, say, inspection or approval or customs or whatever. So I think that's where I believe technology plays a big role, as well as in market access for buyers across the world, cross-border, as well as within UAE, to be able to access product at the right time and at the right cost.
That's very interesting. And can you actually reflect to us more on what you think is the optimal role for public-private partnerships?
Well, if you look at the food value chain, you see multiple players across the various nodes of this value chain, and some of them are from the private sector, but the government also has a big role to play when it comes to regulations and provision of infrastructure, when it comes to ease of business making. So it's very important that there is a clear collaboration. And as far as UAE is concerned, the government has now opened up a lot of new countries through the tariff agreements and CEPA, and also the government is investing through the government vehicles into many countries, right? So as private sector, I believe that there should be an alignment between what the country is seeking to do and where the private sector should go. So that creates a lot of opportunities for a partnership. So in a public-private partnership, you basically combine the strengths of the government or a public sector company and the agility and market knowledge and industry knowledge of the private sector. Mm-hmm. So it's an ideal combination if you really want to quickly move and take control of a certain industry or meet the overall objectives of where the country wants to go. And also, importantly, I think these projects, to be sustainable, they need to be commercially viable. So I believe that is another contribution a private sector can make, because typically the private sector thinks in a very commercial way.
That's great, Ken. You have a very unique position. You are an omni-channel aggregator, and at the same time you are involved across different parts of the value chain in the processing and the distribution. And I would say you're also one of the most companies exposed to the customers, directly exposed to the customers, and also exposed to the producers and the service providers. So one thing is I would like to know from you, what is your view on the key challenges facing the region and facing obviously the UAE, and also what do you think is the role of technology in solving these problems? We have seen in the morning metaverse and all these things. So what, in your perspective, is a way that technology can solve some of these problems, and the role of a company like Barakat in securing or creating, enabling food security and being in line with the strategy of UAE, whether the food security strategy or the cluster strategy?
Thanks, Safullah. As you correctly mentioned, we are in a unique position because one, we are at the epicenter of food security, which I think is one of the main challenges, along with, say, protein and grains and oilseeds. Because fruits and vegetables obviously is very, very basic. Besides that, as you mentioned, we are also an omni-channel aggregator. We're very unique in that sense because we service B2B, we service B2C, we service D2C, and in D2C, several consumer touchpoints where we are actually outsourced for platforms for the fruits and vegetable business. And we also service platforms. We have our own platform. Besides that, we also have our own model concept stores, which basically serve for brand experience. So given this kind of diverse consumer touchpoints, we are well positioned to be able to understand consumer needs better. So that's one point. Second, by virtue of us being in the business for the last 47 years, we've built a global network of suppliers from across the globe. That also helps us to connect both the consumers along with the growers and suppliers. So primarily we work with growers. Now within growers, as part of the food security program, what happens is that there could be challenges that are there in some parts of the world. Our role that we see is to basically make sure that we aggregate the demand well, because as far as the grower is concerned, he needs predictability. And I think in any business, if there's predictability, there's profits, because there's less waste. So we are able to provide that predictability by aggregating the demand of all our consumers and then helping to build buyback arrangements. Another want from the grower side, they want something which is contracted for the year on terms of price and quantity. So that's something that we play a role in. What we've also done is that as part of the food security program, which again, as I tout as the major challenge here, we've tried to move the needle in terms of localization. So in 2020, just to give you a perspective, in 2020, we were 8% fruits and vegetables in our portfolio. Today, it is 26%. So we work very closely with farmers and growers. We work with close to 50 large farms in the UAE. And we not only provide them in terms of, as I mentioned, a good value for their produce, but we also serve as a link between technology providers and make sure that they're able to give the product which is required. For example, if this market is used to European leafies or say produce, then you need technology which comes from Europe. And that's where we come in terms of providing, making the connection with the grower and in Europe and locally. Even we've taken them to the Indian subcontinent. For example, because of the Red Sea issue, we had problems in terms of the melons coming over from Brazil or Latin America. So we would connect the growers in Latin America to the growers in India, so that at least we make sure that our supply chain is preserved. So I think as aggregators, we see a role for ourselves in being able to do that. And then also in terms of, because we have the consumer touch point, making the consumer, the customer, adapt to new origins. Because making the change also is one of the challenges. So being at the forefront of consumer touch point, we are able to do that better than anyone else. Coming back to technology, I think we don't see ourselves as technology providers, at least from the farming point of view, where, say, companies who are very good at that. But I think we see ourselves as facilitators. We see ourselves as using technology to use the agile systems that are available in terms of traceability, in terms of communication to the customers, in terms of their carbon footprints. Like, for example, today, we are able to exactly tell a customer on his invoice, by line item, in terms of what's the carbon kilos that they save based on the substitutability of that particular product, which was supposed to come by either air or ship, but is getting produced locally. And that is something that we give them at the end of the month, a statement, and then from 1st of November, it will be a portal where they can log in, get their carbon kilos saved, and then able to project it onto their ESG reports. So I think that's where we use technology, but not really in terms of being a technology provider.
I'm interested in that regard, since there is a full disclosure to the customer on that part of it, carbon footprint, along with also some nutritional facts and so on. So do you see a role for the customer in terms of diversification of supply, or in terms of enabling food security strategy?
See, as far as the customer is concerned, he's completely dependent on us in terms of, and they're used to a particular origin. So for us, the way we see ourselves is if we need to get a consumer accustomed to something new, then we use things like roadshows, where we really present new concepts, we present new origins, and get the consumer to try. Because we have the confidence, we are able to translate that confidence to our customers in terms of trying new origins. And as a result of which, we are able to ring fence or secure different origins and not get stuck to one particular origin. Case in point being bananas. Everyone over here has grown up either on Ecuadorian bananas or Philippine bananas.
Yes.
But today, you know, a good portion of it is coming from the subcontinent.
Yes.
Okay, so this kind of diversification has a role to play. We as aggregators have a role to play in terms of getting the market used to it because of a need of food security.
Very interesting. And Abdullah actually gave us an interesting story about bananas. I'm not sure we're going to talk about it now. But let's tackle the agriculture, and then I'll go back to you, Abdullah, on the things that are DP World doing right now. So from a smart irrigation standpoint, from an agriculture standpoint, what do you think that the practices that need to be adopted in order to mitigate risks of food security?
The technology sector is really presenting itself as a lifeline to salvage agriculture across this value chain, across both regionally and globally. Although still the rate of penetration in tech in agriculture is still relatively less advanced compared to the rest of the industries. When you look into medicine, telecommunication, all that, we're still at I would say at a very very limited adoption for it, but it does give us a lot of, like I mentioned, like a live stream for the industry to continue in many aspects. One of them is the precision agriculture, that we start using it. So now we can leverage the use of satellites, drones, to optimize our use for irrigation, for water, for fertilizers, without having to deploy different sensors everywhere. We can use that through satellite or drone imagery. And by that, we save a lot of water, and we save the overconsumption of fertilizer that reflects in our operational costs, and also it protects the environment by not having this chemicals residue into the groundwater. So that's one example of it. Another one is in the more data we gather, the more we're able to start utilizing the advanced technologies like AI and ML in terms of optimizing our production mix, leveraging when to harvest, when to plant, and if we run that through across the whole chain. So if I get from Kenneth what's his preferences and his sales price during certain period, then I can work it backward to optimize my production so I can meet his clients' demands, and that way he's in a safe way where he's able to sell at a good price, I'm able to sell at a good price, and we can avoid wastage, which is again a big issue in food security. So that's another aspect of how technology is helping the industry. On another note, also, you'll be surprised that the adoption of technology is happening now in two ways, either with international conglomerates who are utilizing it by linking in their self-driving tractors to satellite and GPS and optimizing the production on fields, or in very remote areas like in India, Nepal, Bangladesh. And the reason for that is that till today, 70% of our food is still produced by small stakeholder farmers. And these these farmers are usually in rural areas where we're facing an aging population. The younger generations are really not interested much in agriculture. It's a tiring job. It's not paying well. It's really a very frustrating job as well. And this aging population is finding in technology really their helper. So it's becoming, you see now, I was surprised to see that the adoption of drones in agriculture is happening in Nepal and India. Farmers are using it to plant, to spray their chemicals, to do their fertilizer. We're seeing now a lot of adoption of smartphones. Everybody has smartphones, so now they're getting weather updates, and extension services are able to reach people that were not able to reach them before by giving them some support. Even ourselves, we did a project with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was a part of UAE aid to Liberia. And that's exactly what we did. We just created a portal for the farmer, and they're not able to, so that we linked everything to IoT devices. And now from our offices in Abu Dhabi, we can do support for the farmer, help him how to mitigate these things, how he can optimize his production. So definitely technology, and the more we adopt it, the more it's going to be, it's going to service and help the industry and food security in general in mitigating the risks that we're facing.
The question I would like to follow up on that is that I'm sensing from what you're saying that the majority, given that the majority of farm owners are the small landowners, they're not the big, large corporations. How are you, as in the company, as AgroLand, how are you able to generate demand from those who constitute the majority of the owners of the farmland?
That's very interesting. Now there is it's a global trend, especially when we look into commodities. There's in the agri-industry as a whole, there's a lot of discrepancy. The farm gate of a lot of commodities that we pay a lot for is really sometimes less than 1/10.
Okay.
With the help of technology now and the help of the supply chain visibility, we're able now to increase the farm gate prices by what a lot of the big chains are doing, which is the ethical sourcing. So we're seeing that happening now in chocolate, in coffee, and even in sugar, and a lot of the commodities that are reliant on the small stakeholder farmers. So, and our role is not to compete with them. We don't want to compete with them. Our role is also to support them, to give them enough technical backup to do an offtake, a fair offtake agreement for them to take these products, so that we can reach our consumers. We work a lot. Again, this is a very important role, which is like our integral relationship in our work, for example, with DP World is very important, because whenever we go into a new market, and we're active in Africa and East Europe, the first thing we do is we reach out to DP World and say, how can we work out the logistics, because we need to get this product out from point A to reach the UAE. And it really makes or breaks many of the investments that we look into if DP is not able to service it in a proper, in a competitive rate, for many reasons that are beyond us. So this is where we come in. And this is where we can come in also in coming up with value-added services to the farmers, to assist them, and also to bring in new varieties, bring in more heat-resistant varieties, more drought-tolerant varieties that can help them achieve productivity levels that will achieve enough productivity to attain their resilience and their substances at the farm. So that's the area that we play in. Yes. That's where we can come in as
an engineering partner.
As an engineering partner or a service provider working in that space.
Yes, that's interesting. So going to Abdullah, now there are two sides of the coin with regards to food sustainability, which is ensuring self-sufficiency and at the same time ensuring proper sourcing. So would like to have from you reflection on DP World's investments in that regard. There is obviously the food logistics hub, there is the agri-terminal and others. So how is DP World working towards ensuring we have the right supply chain infrastructure to mitigate risks of food security?
Sure. So we are working with the private sector in order to alleviate food security for the Emirate of Dubai. So we have embarked on a new journey last year that was announced. The construction of the agri-terminal, it's a 550 million dirham worth of a project. It will not only alleviate the food security for the UAE, but for the region and beyond. Jebel Ali Port in particular is responsible for 76% of all what we consume in the UAE. And
trading.
Yes, and the agri-terminal in particular is not going to serve the needs of Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. These pulses are brought in from Canada, from all over the world. It gets processed in Jebel Ali, it gets sent to the local market, and then it gets also re-exported to support other nations around us. India is the largest consumer of pulses, but it is also the largest importer of pulses, and we contribute to the sustainability. We contribute to a sustainable flow of pulses to India through the agri-terminal in Jebel Ali. Last year, we have also, in July this year, we have also, under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, we have signed a concession agreement with the Dubai municipality to manage the Ras Al Khor market. Ras Al Khor market is a very interesting market for the Emirate of Dubai. It does not only serve the local market, it serves the GCC market. More than 35% of what is being traded is actually exported from Al Awir market, and we are expanding the market in the coming years. This is also in alignment with the initiative that has been announced by the ministry with regards to the various clusters that are being created in the Emirate, and we are working hand in hand to reinforce that with the Ministry of Economy and all the actors and players in the food sector. Finally, technology. Technology is extremely important. We've heard technology in raising agriculture. We've heard technology in creating the right distribution network. There is also the soft technology, which is extremely important to increase the shelf life of the product. So in partnership with Dubai Municipality, and right after COVID-19, we have launched a platform called Zahidi. And the objective of that platform is to accelerate the clearance of the cargo from the port, to ensure that the trader, the consumer, has the maximum life shelf of the product when it gets sold. Of course, more needs to be done, and we're very much open to engage with the industry expert around this table at a subsequent stage to see how can we further alleviate the food security for the United Arab Emirates. We finally, global partnership is extremely important. After COVID-19, many countries started thinking, how can we protect ourselves? The answer is not to create protectionist measures. The answer is to embrace open trade, to embrace free flow of cargo. There is enough supply across the globe to feed the 8 billion people. People say we have another 2 billion to feed. I'm sure there is enough resources across the globe to feed the additional 2 billion of people that hopefully will come in the next 20 years by 2050. It's only a matter of working together. It's a matter of adapting this innovative technology. Humanity have never been so much advanced than it is today.
Yes.
We have all the tools, all the technology. The drones that are being used in India, it really amazes me,
Yeah.
how these technologies are being used. So we can create the right fertile, the right environment to grow crop. We can inject just enough fluid and water into a plant, at the right time to make it grow. So technology is available. It's only a matter of prioritizing, investing in these technologies, investing in needs rather than wants.
Yes.
And I'm sure there is more than enough to serve the growing population of this.
That's perfect. Abdul Jabbar, can we reflect a bit on partnerships, the role of partnerships?
Okay, I will start with one thing, and it is the learning of my life, that partnerships only succeed when there is a commonality of purpose. And as I said in the beginning of the discussion, that our partnerships, with our partners go, 4 decades, 3 decades minimum, and with, as I said, with Jebel Ali Port, similarly with our customers and, with technology providers. So we have been partnered with DP World in particularly, because it is very, much related to this subject that we are all sitting together to discuss, the food security. We have been, if our products have reached to, have penetrated into more than 100 countries, it was only possible because of the great partnerships that we had with the logistics and the, shipping providers, the free zone providers. And then comes our customers who are across the, 50 countries where we have our more than 90 operations. So we are not only associated with our customers and with the port authorities, but with a lot of government authorities, with a lot of public sector influencers, who are key stakeholders in providing us support. So as I said, the most recent one is the partnership that we have in Africa with DP World, where we have put up a plant. Now, this plant is strategically located, which will help in long term the UAE's vision of 2051, where we are going to eradicate the hunger. So the spread of this product will be all over the African region, particularly the landlocked countries who have no access to the ports.
Yes.
And they have manufacturing units, but they cannot produce because they are dependent on the importation of the raw materials. And with all these challenges that we face in an environment which is very friendly for business, it is very difficult for a lot of countries. So there comes the role of IFCO, a company like IFCO, who is very diverse.
Yes.
And as we say, diversity is our strength. Today we are diversified in these many countries, with those many operations, only because we have been very successful with our partners. So we first of all understand what is the common goal with our partners. We agree, and then we go and execute. So that's the reason of our success in this region and internationally wherever we operate.
My eyes now are on Jesse. So I think we're done. But would you like to entertain a couple of questions from the audience? One question. Okay. So we have one question, please, from the audience. Honestly, that's a very tough challenge. I have excellent 5 speakers and extremely interesting topic. So 40 minutes really is very tough. So who has a question, if you would like to ask questions to any of the panelists? Any questions? Jesse is already making sure we don't go over time. Okay, so thank you everybody. Thank you. That have been a very, very interesting session. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.